Hi and welcome. Afternoon tea with Niyati and Shawn. We want to talk to you today about something that happens every day that we don't think about between family, and especially when family is a parent child or an adult and child, relative child. Your child does something and you go, hey, here's a candy. There's a problem here, here's a candy. Just get moving. They don't understand. Um, and we do the same thing now. Instead of candy, we add another thing. We say, here's the phone. Here's the screen. So we're at afternoon tea episodes, and I'm Niyati Patel of Nimble Futures. This is Shawn Bradbury of Grounded in Granite. And we talk about things that matter in family, in community, through the individuals that we are. And we will be talking about candy flossing screens and how they weave into our relationships. So to just start off, we were discussing right before we started recording about. I mean, I was not surprised but still stunned when I saw a little girl of 7 years old telling me, adorable, wise, wonderful child, telling me, she gets her inspiration from TikTok for her art and her dance. And Shawn had some other experiences like that you want to share?
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. So, I work with a young man on the spectrum in the community, and we take a lot of public transportation. And recently, we saw a young guy with his little girl. I'm bad at age, so she's a few years old, right? But I looked down into the carriage that she was in, and she's holding a cell phone, playing a game. I could hear something going on, and I just thought, wow, for her age to have a phone in her hands to be distracted, like why doesn't she have a toy or something that's going to you know that she a puzzle or something that she can have and work with, and but why a phone? And it's just like ugh, it just kind of made me cringe, and I felt really bad when I saw that.
The audience here, you, us, we all have these moments and experiences where we're seeing, a lot of this screen time and a lot of this disconnect happen, even for ourselves. We're not excluded from this epidemic. Uh, but I just want to say, whether it's a toy or it's a screen or it's candy, uh, I think something more essential is going on here, where we're unable to sit one on one with each other and just spend time with each other. And that has grown over time. And the way in that has happened is, before there was probably candy, there was TV. I guess you can also distract with a toy if you want. But that whole process of distraction is what this conversation is about. Um, it's not the question of whether the screens are good or bad, or the candies are good or bad. That's a whole different conversation. But what really happens in the moment when you're having a challenge, when you're having a difficulty in your relationship, what do you do with that? And that really got us talking, and we wanted to speak to you about that and see what hear your thoughts on it.
And one thing I would do want to add to is, like, even just bringing up that example, I'm not trying to guilt or shame that person by any stretch of the imagination. So anyone who's done that, given their kid a phone or something, you know, hey, I have a teenage daughter. She's on her phone all the time. She's watched TV. She's done all of these things because we're all human beings, and sometimes that's how we deal with things. So once again, there is no shame or guilt here. This is just a conversation about that.
When I think about, a moment when things are not going well, my first stop is to grab a coffee. Is the coffee makes everything better for me. Does it solve the problem? No. And sometimes it's not the solution because for the most part, I can go to sleep after having a coffee. But there are times when it actually disrupts my sleep on top of whatever it is that I'm dealing with. Um, and that's the coffee's job to keep you awake, right? Uh, so, and I got started on coffee when I did because I saw the adults around me have coffee. And honestly, it's bitter. It's not tasty at all. So there are days when I look back and I go, why do I need it? It's not even tasty. Um, and that's the same question that comes up to me when I'm scrolling. This is not even fun. This is exhausting. Why am I on here? Um, but then I think back to some real challenging times in my life with dear ones, and I mean, we've come a long way, and it's always work in progress. And I will use my mom's example because she gives me the grace to use her as an example. Thank you, Mom. Um, but there have been times when she'll just, it's said we come up with something challenging, and she said, "Well, let's just talk about something nice." I'm like, "No, let's talk about what the problem is." And so let's talk about something nice. To me, is equivalent to jumping to the coffee or me eating sweets or eating food to feel better or scrolling on my phone. And it is that disconnect that doesn't go away on its own. We can create distance from it, we can forget it for a while. And that disconnect is not really about proving right or wrong, but it's this deep craving to understand and to be understood. That's what I think.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. A lot of the things I've done over the years to just avoid even sitting with myself and the things I have to sit with, it's actually been quite a few, truthfully. But one of the things was I would collect things, right? I collected many different things, and it was kind of the going out and finding it and getting that dopamine hit of here it is, right? This is great. Come home and like, okay, when's the next one coming? So there was many years where I had collections. And I'm not saying collecting things are bad, but I think you have to understand why. Ask yourself, why am I collecting this, right? Um, some of my collections I enjoyed, other than them just took up time and space, and now I've had to deal with them now. Like I've gotten rid of a lot of them now. But even the time and money that I spent in avoiding and doing those things, now I have to spend more time trying to get rid of these things. You know, whether what do I do with it? Do I give it away? Do I try to sell it? Do I, whatever? But I have to handle it again and again, and it just takes up more of my time that now I realize is extremely valuable, and I don't want to waste it on doing that. But yet you accumulate all these things that you think are doing something for you, but they're just a tool to help you avoid what you're not facing. So that's been one of my biggest things too. So I'm definitely more about experiences and less about possessions than I ever have been before. So, but that was one of my biggest vices was doing that.
Yeah, and the difficult things, they come in various forms. Um, we've talked in some of our previous episodes about the power of saying no, setting boundaries, and they come in all relationships, finding that right balance, or um, discovering yourself as to what is it that you want and how you wish for things to be, being able to make a choice within your circumstances. And sometimes we lack that, and so then it becomes a challenge for everybody else around us because then it goes by default, but then we're not happy about it. and it creates a strain in the relationship. Other times, we're just seeing things very differently. I mean, if a child is this tall and the parent is this tall, you're looking from very different vantage points. Your height is a big advantage. Well, you can see much further. You, as a child, you see this far. Um, but maybe as a child, you see things from a ground up perspective, and as a child, an adult, you see from a top down. And again, it's a different vantage point. So these are different challenges. This is how they come in different guises of, and then they can increase in the tension they create when they're not understood or talked about, uh, or even understood in ourselves.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And you also pick up on what you said about boundaries too. And I think there's two types of boundaries. There's like the boundary we have for everyone else, and there's the boundary we have for ourselves,
Mm.
right? So, like me buying things or me eating a bag of chips while I'm sitting on the couch at 8 o'clock at night, when I know better, but I'm doing it for whatever reason because it tastes good. And it's just knowing the outcome and taking that moment to say, do I need this? Asking yourself questions, why am I doing this? Am I avoiding something? How is this going to affect me in an hour or tomorrow? How's this all going to play out? And I just think it's a lot of it has to do with just finding that quiet time, that a moment, and just being with ourselves. And we've talked about this many times. It's just hard nowadays, especially with technology and everything, just to be able to sit down with yourself, even for 10 minutes, just to sit in the quiet, because we are so used to go, 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 get things done. If I'm not like going full bore, then something must be wrong, because we're taught this mentality that if we slow down, we're gonna fall behind, But that's not the case. We need to take that time for ourselves, to give ourselves that breath, to connect with ourselves and realize what is going on.
And by that measure, we want to teach that to our children, not just our own, but any
Yeah.
child we encounter, because that really is the fabric of life, or living a good life is what do you do with yourself, and how do you appreciate yourself, and how do you guide your own life. And I feel that when we start to put um, whether it's candy or individual devices into our children's hands without the knowledge, like, we go to school for many years to learn something worth a degree, but this child is barely here in this world. They don't have the mechanisms of why I'm here, what I'm doing. Is this going to be beneficial for my life? How do I make a choice? Is this candy good for me or not? These are things that we are giving them opportunity to experience, to be able to make choices on their own about. But if we don't allow that learning, and we just kind of let them figure it out because we don't have time to deal with it, but we're doing other things like provide the food, shelter, the big stuff. But this is a much deeper and more essential part of it that goes along with the big stuff, that we have created this distance because now they don't know who they are. And it's taking them away from us too over time. And it's because the distance was just a tiny bit at the beginning, and then it keeps growing because they're just different directions. And I just want us to reflect on that. What is it that we want to give our kids? And is it only what is seen in the outside? What is it that is on the inside? And how can we show up for that?
Yeah, I think a lot of times as parents, we want to provide, we want to be there, right? We want to do all these roles that we have, but sometimes I think we forget that one of the biggest things our kids want is just our time, you know? Um, and even now, my daughter just turned 18, and the other day, after having dinner, we both enjoyed doing art, and I got back into drawing, which I used to do as a kid. And after we ate, we sat down, we were at the table, and we started to draw. I just took my phone, played some music on it, and we would talk and listen to the music, and just be focused in on what we were doing with with our art. And it was just such a nice moment. Like everything felt like it slowed down, and there was just such this really nice connection of this is it. We had music, we had art, we had each other. And I think a lot of times I think we forget as parents because we're just so damn busy that our kids just really want our attention. And we might think that something they ask might be so minute that you think you can just deal with it yourself, right? But if you take a moment, they might actually be needing you, just to take a moment to sit down with them. And I've found this out to be true for myself too, that sometimes, sure, you want them to be responsible and you want them to do these things, but there's still a part of them that wants connection, and sometimes we just have to really stop and just give them a little of our time, because I think the more we do that, the more we role model that time that's important to be with them, the more that they're going to appreciate it and want it more.
And that connection is good for us too. We need it.
Without
We
a
may
doubt.
not always realize it.
I walk away filled, man. I walk away if we're doing something like that. We have some art time, or we're doing something together. It's like I treasure those moments.
So, on this note, we want to close our discussion for now until we see you next month. But this is what we want to leave you with is what is it that you can bring in the moment for you and your family, and anything that resonates with you from what I said, what Shawn said, we would love to hear from you. So please write us. You can comment below or just reach us out. We have our links in the description. So we thank you so much for your support and coming out here and listening, and we hope to continue this conversation going forward. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Take care.